Hey, all you cool cats and kittens. It's Carol Baskin, and you are listening to Fascination Street.
I believe that everybody has a story, and I'm fascinated to hear them. So come with me as we take a walk down Fascination Street. Welcome back, Streetwalkers. This episode is with Donald Carpenter. Donald was the frontman and lead singer for the bands SubmerseD and I, Empire, and currently he's the frontman for the new band Blisskrieg. In this episode, we talk about Donald's history with music and his previous two bands, and then we go right into how he came to be the frontman for this new band Blisskrieg. We walk down memory lane a little bit with some of the music and some of the life experiences. He lets me play one of the songs off this new album. I love this album. I wasn't kidding when I said I'd listened to it more than 10 times this week. And I feel like we have a lot of fun talking about some very adult ways to handle relationships and learning when and how much blame to take when a relationship doesn't work out. This is one of those genuine and honest conversations that made me want to start a podcast in the first place. This was recorded during all the self-distancing due to the coronavirus outbreak. So if that is over by now, woohoo. If not, damn it. But either way, this is my conversation with the singer, songwriter, and guitar player from the new band Blisskrieg, Donald Carpenter, whose album Remedy is out now and available everywhere. Yeah, talk to me. Welcome to Fascination Street Podcast, Donald Carpenter. How you doing today, Donald?
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It is absolutely my pleasure. So the way that I like to get things started is I like to ask people where they were born and raised. So why don't you tell us, man? Where were you born? Where were you raised?
I was actually born in Harris Methodist Hospital in Fort Worth, Texas in 1978, and I grew up in a little small town just southwest of that called Stephenville, Texas, which most recently is famous for UFO sightings, things of that nature. But we are, Texas Music City. There's a lot of history here. That's where I grew up.
My sister used to live in Stephenville for a few years. Now she lives, I think, in Flower Mound. I think. Like, I don't know where my own sister lives. No, she lives in Flower Mound.
Not too far, but that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's a small town. It's grown a lot over the years, and the college here is now Division I, and you start to hear it a lot more.
Oh, so you're still there?
Yeah. We've been back here for a few years now, and it kind of got to a point how everything was musically. There's a lot of touring. There's a lot of time away from family, things of that nature. And when I stepped away from everything, the natural progression was to get back to the roots and, share that with my family.
What did you want to be when you grew up?
I've always been a dreamer. I'm, older. I've, found out that I'm Asperger's, and, I've always kind of known in my early adulthood that I'm kind of a manic depressive bipolar mental makeup. And so when I was younger, and even older, I'm a dreamer. So, even now I still want to be an astronaut, and I still want to be an archaeologist like, Indiana Jones. And those were the professions that really I gravitated to when I was younger, kind of unlocking some of the secrets to the world and exploring and finding new ways and new frontiers, so on and so on. I was a big astronaut kid. I was a big archaeologist kid. And then as I got older, music just, took over and has never let go.
Is anybody in your family musically inclined? Like, did your dad play bass in a rock and roll band, or, was your mom a screaming singer?
No, I mean, I'm very much a black sheep for my family. I come from a very, humble, country upbringing. My mom grew up in a military family. She was born in Ketchikan, Alaska, and they moved constantly over and over. And I think it's, sometimes when that type of life, it's a little harder to find yourself. I think, you don't really have your roots embedded. I think it takes away some of the confidence, in a lot of ways. And so none of them were really musically inclined. I do have one aunt, which is my dad's sister, who, is a piano teacher, and, she sang in the choir here locally. We share a little bit of that common bond, but I'm very much the black sheep of my family.
Folks listening, we haven't really addressed this yet, but Donald is a face-melting singer and guitar player from some pretty big bands. He fronted SubmerseD and a band called I Empire. And his newest project, he is the lead vocalist and guitar player for the new band Blisskrieg. Blisskrieg is all of the band members except the singer from the original days of the new lineup, and all of the same band members except the singer from the original Tantric lineup. Previous guest of the show, Jesse Vest, is the bass player for all three of the bands I just mentioned. I'm going to assume SubmerseD was your first big band.
That was my first signed project. That was a Texas-based, outfit that, we ended up moving to Orlando later to be, next to our mentors. That kind of took us out of Texas. But SubmerseD started here in Dallas, my first signed band with Wind Up Records, and that's where it all began for sure.
So you guys, y'all didn't go to high school or anything together, did you?
Three of the band members in SubmerseD, we grew up in the same town here in Stephenville. They weren't in the same grade as me. They were a few years younger than me, but we very much knew each other growing up. And then, as our journey took us through the ropes, we ended up acquiring, E-Rock, Eric Friedman, who was closely acquainted with our mentor, who was Mark Tremonti from Creed. Later during the process of preparing for our debut record, we found Garrett Whitlock, who was the drummer, and that rounded out the lineup there.
Nice. So you might not know this, but I mean, you might not know whether or not I'm wrong, but if I'm correct, I think all of the other dudes in Blisskrieg went to high school together, I think.
Yeah, they have a deep history. I've had the fortune to, really learn a lot about these guys and their history and from them directly, just in just so many candid, close conversations now. And it's been a real treat for me because I was a big fan, they were going to the same school. Matt and Jesse, kind of started playing music together. I mean, he grabbed his first bass, he grabbed his first drums, and that's where it all began. And then I'm pretty sure that Todd was going to school in an adjacent area. I don't know if he was in the exact same school, but he was close. They were in the same town, the same area, and they've known each other since they were young bucks. And then obviously Days of the New, they blew up really, really quickly. And, as far as I know, they were all still seniors in high school when that all began. So it's been a phenomenal journey for everybody.
So I think that is true about them blowing up while they were still in high school. That rings true. It sounds familiar. So with SubmerseD, you guys had some pretty good success, right?
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of moving parts to that, and to break a band, it doesn't just take a lot of good planning and a lot of good strategy, but it takes some luck, and it takes certain things falling into place for the day and age that we were coming out. And some of the behind-the-scenes things that were going on, I think we had, some pretty good success. In this business, it's about opening doors. That band opened up so many doors for all of us. It was a key pivot point, and I think it's, the older I've gotten and the more opportunities I've had, win, lose, or draw, I've really had to learn to redefine success. You can't just make it all about numbers or, money and that kind of thing. As far as that goes, I think it was one of the most significant, moments in my life was that band and all the relationships and the doors that it helped open for me.
That makes sense. So I was listening to, I want to say it was maybe the first album by SubmerseD. Is that the one that has Hollow on it?
Yes, sir. In due time.
Oh, okay. Yeah, there you go. I was checking that out over the past couple of days, and I got to ask, are you the primary lyric writer for SubmerseD, or were you?
Yeah, I try to know my role and step up and play my part. And for me, that's the vocalization and the lyrical content. It is important for me to make sure that everybody is telling their stories. I think for SubmerseD in particular, that was a learning experience. I was really just kind of finding my way around, and a lot of the other guys were too. So we were all kind of beginners, but the bulk of that was definitely on my plate.
Well, kudos, sir. Well done. That album is beautiful, and the lyrics are outstanding. Honestly, I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I remember hearing SubmerseD, like maybe back in the day or whatever, but it had been a while since I had, listened or revisited. And when I was jamming out to that album, man, it blew me away. It sort of threw me back to, hey, remember what music used to be?
Yeah, I mean, making that record was definitely nostalgic. I mean, things have changed over the years, and there were so many incredible people that were involved with helping us, make that music. And I think the energy that you're surrounded by, I think a certain spot in the timeline, your spirit is just in a certain spot. And it was a great experience. I mean, it's nice to get praise on the lyrical content because it's one of the things that I'm most critical on myself on. I feel like I need the most growth in. And, I remember early on when, SubmerseD was going for deals and we were being looked at. I remember Clive Davis and J Records was really kind of pressing us for a little bit. And he just commented on how much he didn't like my lyrics. He just didn't think I was a very good lyricist.
Clive?
Yeah. So it was a learning experience from a couple of different sides. So it's been an interesting journey.
Well, I'm glad that you told that story about Clive. So let's just go back to that. So, at the time, this is your dream, right? You want to get signed. You're already a musician. You've got all these lyrics, these songs that you're really proud enough that you take to, I guess, one of the best producers or record company executives in history, Clive Davis.
Right.
How did that affect you when he was like, "Nah, we're good. I'm not a fan of the lyrics"? Like, what did that do to you, I guess, emotionally? And why didn't you just quit based on that interaction?
Hindsight's 2020, so it's always so much easier to kind of reflect back and maybe see some of the things that were going on. But, I think within my bipolar mind, my ego was very strong at that time. It was too strong. And so, on one side of it, it was kind of like, what does he know? Even though it's Clive Davis, because that's what your ego does. On the other hand, I just took it as an opportunity to grow, as a little bit of a wake-up call to that ego. I wish I maybe would have taken a little more to heart as far as just saying, hey, this doesn't have to be a negative. This can be a positive. It's not like you have this all figured out. Maybe there's a grain of truth to this that can allow me to kind of go back and reflect on things and get better at what I do and put me in a position to maybe be a little more critical of myself and to, strive to always get better rather than assuming that what is there is great. Sometimes it takes a little more work than that.
I think that's an excellent answer. And this might sound disrespectful as a follow-up question, but it's certainly not intended to. Once you got those notes from Clive or you found out that, whatever his reason was, what did you do about it?
Well, I mean, it's hard to answer that question now. It was a long time. It was almost 20 years ago,
Right.
Actually, it was about 20 years ago.
Happy anniversary. Glad I could bring that up.
Yeah. We're celebrating the anniversary of the big Clive, thumbs down. But yeah, I mean, it's just the thing. The biggest thing about it, and I think you start learning really early on, you can't please everybody. You can't make everybody happy, whether it's the fans or the execs and so on and so on. And, I think in the end, you learn how to kind of rise above the static and just really kind of stay in your own lane and focus on yourself. So with that being said, I took something like that and just said, okay, well, I need to get better. Obviously, I'm missing something here. And, at that point in time, and you can hear with the progression of my writing from SubmerseD to Empire and definitely into this Blisskrieg record, that being poetic and being vague is important to the process because you want people to be able to put themselves in the story. But you also have to bring enough clarity so that your words have a deep impact, And so I think some of what Clive was missing was me balancing out some of the poetic vagueness with a little more clarity. So I think for him, he just wanted something that he didn't really have to think so deeply into to really pull from it, And I can respect that. I don't have a problem with that. But once again, it goes back to learning that everybody's different. Music is a highly subjective art. It's just one of those things that's probably more preferential than any other art form. And so if it doesn't resonate with somebody, it just doesn't resonate with somebody, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be accepted by everybody.
That is a wonderful answer. So we're talking about SubmerseD and the success that you had with that early album and the things that you learned from maybe some criticism that you got from one of the biggest record producers on the planet back then. And thank you for explaining how you sort of incorporated that advice. One of the questions that I really like to ask people, because I talk to people on this show who are great in all sorts of fields. I talk to authors, I talk to actors and directors, hell, even an astronaut, and of course musicians. But one of the questions that I love to ask, because I didn't grow up with a lot of self-confidence. So what made you think you could write songs, play guitar, front a band, be successful? Like, what made you think you could do all those things?
I think when you're an artist, regardless of what format you present it in, I think art chooses you. I don't think it's anything where you make a decision that I've got this list of 20 different things to do. I think I'm going to pick number 12, which is artist, or singer, or so on and so on. It's something that when the time is right for some, you watch some of these amazing talented artists that are out there and they're 2 or 3, 4 years old and you can just see it coming out of them, that what they're going to grow into. And for me, it wasn't as clear early on. I think, I gravitated towards music early on, but it really wasn't until, I got into high school and, my freshman year, I remember the grunge scene exploded, and that was the Alice in Chains and the Soundgardens and these bands that just had that emotion that was exuding from those performers just really, really woke me up. And, Live Throwing Copper had just come out, his voice, the lyrical content, the emotion and the music really spoke to me. And so I went to a concert, up in Dallas, and I just remember, watching Ed as a front man. I remember him coming out into the audience and, walking out. We were underneath the pavilion, the awning, and we were in that, maybe the 200 section, right back from the lower section. So there was the main walkway that went right in front of you. And we were out on that front row of that, by the bar there. And he just came out and was right in front of us. And I was maybe 14 or 15. I just remember in that moment just thinking, that's what I want to do. I always had a bit of a deeper calling within the church and things of that nature of working with people and, summer camp counselor and things of that nature where I gravitated towards connecting and helping people, even though I'm on the other side, I'm very much a reclusive person, and being able to create music and perform music and generate that connection. It's just so electric. And I think that was really was the spark. And then I think from there, it was a matter of just, putting together that first cover band and, starting to play shows and feeling all these things, because it really is a feeling, especially when you're on stage. I don't even think even up until the beginning of SubmerseD, it was something I felt like I could do. I felt like it was something that I wanted to do, but you really don't know who you are, as an artist until you can get out there and play night after night, and whether it's a full room or an empty room, and with iEmpire, we toured so much, and there were a lot of nights where there is only 5, 10, 15 people in there, and to me, that's when you really learn that, hey, I can do this, because when you're in that room and you have to manufacture that electricity, that's where you start saying, hey, this may be what I'm kind of here to do, like not everybody can do this. And so this is where I'm going to stay.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
This is Alan Bishop, head alchemist at Spirits of French Lake Distillery. We're glad to introduce to you our newest bottled and bond bourbons, the Lee W. Sinclair 4-grain bourbon and the Matty Gladden High Rye bourbon. As always, these two bourbons are deeply rooted in the history of our location in the Black Forest of southern Indiana. Always double pot distilled, never chill filtered, made using the finest grains, alternative and historic yeast strains that we propagate ourselves, and the methodology that once made southern Indiana an epicenter of American distilling. Matured gracefully in 53-gallon No. 2 char, new American oak barrels, using a low 105 entry proof. The Lee Sinclair presents an oak-forward profile, which pushes forward the definition and conversation about bourbon possibilities, while the Matty Gladden graces us and demonstrates respect with her 35% rye mash bill. It's not just the spirits in the bottle, it's the spirits of the place. Respect the grain and drink responsibly.
Let's get back into it.
So you went from SubmerseD to iEmpire. Without getting too personal, is there a reason that SubmerseD and you are no longer, or like what happened?
When a band breaks up, one of the unfortunate things is that a lot of people do end up getting singled out, but the fact of the matter is that it's an extremely dynamic situation. It's a full marriage between 4, 5, 6, 7 people, whoever it is and however many you got in there. So there's a lot of moving parts. And for SubmerseD, we were all very young. We were all dealing with ego. We were all dealing with, honestly, a little bit of too comfortable of a start. We got so lucky and we were just so fortunate. It was almost just like divine intervention on so many levels. And I really think some of the foundation, some of the glue that really holds bands together, those bands that are together for a long, long time, which is very few of them. Maybe U2 is the only one, that has all the original guys. But yeah, I think one of the things that holds those bands together is coming up together and going through that struggle and building it and, all those things that we didn't really have that. And when it really got to the point, where we were being tested by some of the natural occurrences within an industry, there's a lot of mind games being played with the label and A&R reps and the bands and so on and so on. And we just didn't handle it well. I definitely played a role. As a singer, you always kind of carry the dialogue in a lot of ways. But, we all played our part, and it just didn't work out. We didn't handle it well. The label had a lot of stuff going on. In the end, we had a couple of guys that were just like, I'm not really down for this. This isn't really what I signed up for, and I think I'm going to go try to do something else. I didn't blame them at that point. It was offered to me to stick around the label, but, so many things had happened at that point in time that just decided to walk away. It wasn't something that I was interested in continuing Submerse and just putting a bunch of different people in there. I've never really been that guy, but yeah, it was unfortunate. It was something that took a long, long time, even until recently, to really be able to kind of move past. But bands like this, Blisskrieg, it really, really helps put it all behind you.
Well, I love when I get a grown-up answer. That was a great answer as an adult. You know what I mean? Like, I'm sure that if I had asked you that in your mid-20s, I would have gotten a different answer. But I love that growing up, it never stops. So I love that you've, grown up enough to give me a man's answer. I love it. You took some of the blame, and sometimes things just don't work out. Let's talk about iEmpire. How'd that form?
Kind of just weird timing. Past Submersed, I really had no idea what I was going to do. I had a young family that was, we were just starting, and there was a lot going on. And living in Tampa Bay area, I'd spent a year working in the front office of the Tampa Bay Lightning, wearing a suit and tie and doing the sports entertainment work. And it was fun. And it was a very, interesting job. And I learned a lot and learned a lot about just social interaction and communication and things that, ironically, I needed to grow a lot in. And there was a lot of regret. It was not a very happy time, because I wasn't living my purpose, and I remember one day, sitting in the office, just kind of looked down, had my tattoos covered up, I got my tie. It just, I was thriving within the job because I always try to be, always try to do good at whatever I'm doing, but I wasn't happy, and I was just kind of looking down, just like, what am I doing, and had no idea, where I would go, what, if it was music, whatever it was. I just knew I didn't need to be there. So I actually went down to a little fish shack, down by the beach where we lived, and I knew the people there, and I said, hey, can I just come and just work a simple job down here and just give myself some time to kind of get out of the madness. And so I started working there, cutting fish in a back room, and we were living off maybe $1,500 a month. It was what it was, but we found as a family that, those are some of our best times because we just kept it simple. It was called the Fish House, actually. I think it was MySpace. I don't think Facebook had even began yet. I think MySpace was in its death throes at that point in time. And so I was still, noodling around in there a little bit. And I got this message in my inbox from Corey Lowry, who was, came up through Stuck Mojo and then started a band called Stereo Mud that I really liked. They had a single called Pain back in the late 90s, early 2000s. And he had started a band called Dark New Day with his brother Clint Lowry from Seven Dust and a bunch of other players that are incredible. And so I was a big fan, and he reached out to me and said, hey, I'm working on some music. I don't know what you're doing, but, I like your voice, and I wanted to see if you wanted to come up and maybe put some ideas together. And I went up on Halloween of that year. I think it was Halloween of 2008 or 2009. And that's where, iEmpire began. And we toured nonstop. And, we're probably the most active independent band in the country at that time. And I learned a lot. It was an incredible experience.
So you said at the beginning of that, when you went to go work at the fish shack, you said it was some of our best times, and you mentioned your family. So am I correct to assume that you were married with maybe a child by that time?
Yeah, my wife's from Canada. We had just had our second child around that time. We had our second child when I was working for the Lightning. And so we had two young boys, 22 months apart. They were young. And, like I said, it was, we had a little place on the beach that we were taking care of. We had our first child in Canada. And so we had to transition back to the States. And that's how we ended up in Tampa. My manager from SubmerseD was an incredible mentor and confidant, and he really helped us out and kind of get through those times.
All due respect, if I had a suit and tie job and then I said, I'm going to go cut fish for a while, I think my wife would maybe have shot me in the face. So how are you able to make that decision smoothly? How'd that go?
I get that. Well, I mean, my wife is pretty much one of the most incredible, roll with the punches, people I've ever met in my life. She has been 100% supportive of me from the beginning. I mean, she's incredibly talented herself, very beautiful. And, she had a certain trajectory before she met me, and I think that maybe is sometimes, unfortunately, a common thread. Us men kind of roll in here and change things up. But she just sacrificed a lot. And she knew, we were going through that unhappy experience with the Lightning together. It wasn't that this was anything that I was feeling something that she wasn't. And at that point in time, it was the right decision just to try to gain some sanity, just a little bit of peace to where we could kind of focus on, whatever that next step was going to be. We were going to take our time and be patient, and we were going to be doing it together. So as long as we were together and as long as, we were creating that vision, that was all we needed.
So this was a conversation you had. You didn't just come home one day and be like, hey, babe, guess what? I quit my job. I'm going to go cut fish.
No, not at all. I mean, I'm one of those people where I tend to ponder and I tend to think and not really stew on things, but I don't rush into a decision. I just listen to my heart. And, the Lord had started putting on my heart for a few months, and then my heart let me know when the day came. So when that came, we were on the same page.
That makes sense. Is iEmpire still together? Is it still a band?
No, we kind of burned it out. Independently, we burned out our opportunities, with the little label we had there. There was some conflicts with, management, vision, and guidance and things of that nature. And then, when you tour for as long as we did, you need a break. And just kind of over that lack of communication during the quote-unquote break and trying to, re-strategize, reconfigure where we're headed, just didn't come back together. It was a little unfortunate, but once again, the Lord knows best. He took everybody in a much better direction.
Oh, that's good to hear. Now I want to talk about this new band called Blisskrieg. Blisskrieg is a made-up word. Krieg, I think, means war.
Right.
And so I guess this is a happy war?
Or a loving war. That's the way I like to put it.
A loving war. Okay, great. So, as previously mentioned, other people in this band are everybody from the original incarnations of Days of the New and Tantric. We're talking about Jesse Vest on bass, we're talking about Matt Taul on drums, and we're talking about Todd Whitener on guitar. And then we add Donald Carpenter, vocalist and guitar player. How did you get hooked up with all these fellers? Oh, and real quick, just everybody, this is something that happened as a direct result of COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown. All four of these dudes have other projects going on, and so they never really had time to get together and hang out and do some stuff and make some magic. But COVID, sadly, afforded that opportunity. So walk us through that, Donald. How did you get hooked up with these dudes?
Well, first off, the title there, Todd is the singer guitar player because he actually does a lot of vocalization and he carries all the lifting on the guitars. I do play a little bit of acoustic, but I'm primarily just the lead vocalist. So I don't want to take any credit where it's not due, especially on this project, because Todd just absolutely blew me away. I mean, blew everybody away with his guitars. But it started for me as a fan, like you were saying. I was a fan of Days of the New. And I was a fan of that band. I wasn't a fan of how they were treated and how it ended, to be honest with you. And when they moved on and started Tantric, I was right there from the beginning. And I remember actually watching them come up and play a show at the Hard Rock in Dallas, on that first Tantric record. And so it's just so ironic to, later down the road, I think probably that fall before COVID hit, I got this message from Todd in my social media inbox. And he was like, hey, this is Todd from Days of the New and Tantric. And, and, you know, a guitar player. And he's like, you know, I just was a fan of your voice. You know, I used to listen to Submersed satellite radio, you know, going to the studio, and I just love Hollow. And, you know, I was just wondering, what are you doing? You know, what's going on? And I'd love to make some music together. And so as I'm reading that, especially as I had been out of the game, I honestly had no idea if I even had the passion or desire to sing again. But here I do. I get this, you know, message, and it's just so humbling, and it gets you those butterflies, you know, where you're like, oh man, you know, people, am I still cool? You know, like, do I still have my club card? Like, can I do this? So I immediately got back to him. I was like, man, I am a huge fan of yours. I can't believe I'm getting this, you know, message, and absolutely, you know, I'd love to do something. And a little time had passed, and then I got another message, and he's like, dude, I am on tour with Dierks Bentley. You know, he works on the Bentley crew.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and he was like, and we are actually in Dallas tomorrow. You know, he got in his bunk that night and put his headphones on, and via the random shuffle, you know, Hollow came up, and he was just like, oh my God, I haven't heard this song in forever. You know, what's this guy doing? And that's what kind of started that whole stalker trying to track me down and send me that first message. And so ironically, he was in his bunk headed to Dallas, and it was kind of last minute, but he was like, hey man, you know, I'll be in Dallas tomorrow. I can't believe this. Would you be interested in, you know, coming out to the show and meeting up? You know, I can leave a couple of tickets. And I'm not a big country fan, but, you know, last minute, I grabbed a really good friend of mine, Jason, and we drove up there, and yeah, we went up there to see Todd, and we hung out on the bus for about an hour and a half before the show started. And it was crazy. It was like we'd known each other for a long time. There was an instant connection. And from there, we started a phone conversation and exchanging ideas for about, you know, 5-6 months. By that time, we're into early 2020, and COVID starts, and he comes off the road. Dierks is shutting down. Everybody's shutting down. And we started talking a little more about doing this writing because it seemed like there's some time opening up, right? Well, ironically, him and Jesse started to reconnect, and somebody shared a video of Matt playing the drums, you know, so that's kind of got the butterflies going, if you know what I mean. And then those three guys kind of started to discuss the possibility of maybe coming back together and making music again, which nobody thought would happen. You know, everybody's in such different places. So Todd came back to me and was like, hey, you know, I know we were talking about making some music together and so on, but what would you think about if me and Todd and Jesse got back together again to make some new music? Would you be interested in coming in and singing for that? And to me, I feel like it's a stupid question. You know what I mean? Like, my situation just got better. You know, it just took a monumental leap forward, and I was just so honored and so humbled. And, you know, from there, it was really kind of seeing how it all came together, and every step of the way, it just kept getting better and better. I feel personally, I'm a bit of a, you know, hippie-minded person when it comes to certain things, and, you know, I feel like we all knew each other in a past life. The way the music came, and we sat down and wrote 10 songs, and 10 songs made the record. It just really came out of us. And it was almost like we had been waiting to make this record. We had been waiting to come together since our previous life.
Well, that is definitely good to hear. And I agree with you. All due respect to Todd, that's a dumb question, man. You're asking me if I want to play in the same sandbox with these guys that I looked up to twice? Yeah. I mean, come on now.
Yeah, I know. And it's just
super successful, and that's great.
Yeah, and for me, it's, you know, to have the generic opportunity is great, but when there's actually some gravitas to it, and there's, you know, some depth to what's happening, and knowing what these guys have been through, and knowing the connection they have, and, you know, my ability to come in and help them come back together and create, you know, a new, fresh fellowship. You know, everybody is so different now. Everybody's grown up. Everybody's learned so much. You know, everybody's matured. And that was one of the things that I told them listening back to this stuff was, you know, guys, just from a fan's perspective, knowing you all in the past, it just sounds like everybody's grown so much. Like, it just sounds so mature. The clarity of the purpose is just there. It's just so humbling to be a part of.
Well, I could not agree more. If I was in that situation, I might have exploded with excitement. That's just so cool.
Hey, Streetwalkers, here's a word from our sponsors.
Contactee is the new movie from me, Vincent Caldoni. When therapist Jay Rossi is assigned a patient who claims to have been abducted by aliens, her story wins him over. Her tales begin to take on an aura of truth rather than insane delusion, and he concocts a plan to confront the alien intelligence. He absconds with her to a cabin in the mountains to document the phenomenon, prove that she is not crazy, but See, here's the thing. Messing with an otherworldly intelligence proves to be more dangerous than either Jay or his patient could have ever foreseen. Contactee is a heady thriller, more focused on ideas than CGI, and loaded with twists. For more details, visit contacteemovie.com.
Let's get back into it.
So all of the other dudes in that band, Blisskrieg, like we said earlier, they've all known each other since they were basically in high school. And knowing that they've all been friends for more than 20 years or whatever, was it intimidating to walk into this group of lifelong buddies and sort of stand there and hold your own?
To be honest with you, I've been in a lot of intimidating rooms. And when you're a singer, especially when you're going out for record deals and stuff, there's a lot of sing monkeys sing, you know. I mean, I've walked into living rooms or, you know, just straight boardrooms and people just said, okay, now sing. And it gets really intimidating. I mean, I think for me, the most intimidating or the most cerebral part of the process was just making sure that I could hold my own, just making sure that I could come up with my own little bits of greatness to really add to, you know, what they're bringing to the table. So I wouldn't really categorize it as nervousness as much as it was this anticipation to try to be better and to prove that I too have grown. I'll be honest with you, I feel very proud of what we were able to come up with.
Well, you should. I've listened to that album a little more than 10 times so far since it came out a couple days ago. I love it. And we're going to talk about the album in a second. But real quick, remember I told you my sister used to live in Stephenville and now she lives in Flower Mound?
Yeah.
Well, when I told her that I was going to be speaking with you today, because, you know, I got all excited and stuff, and I told her, she told me that I was too chicken to ask you this question. And so just for her,
here we go.
I'm going to ask him, Stephanie, because you said you dared me. Knowing that all of the guys that are in Blisskrieg, besides you, this is their third band all together with a new singer. Are you worried that the whole band is going to just leave and go get another singer and start another band?
From me? Well, I mean, I would like to think that I've left an indelible mark, but no, I'm not worried about anything like that. And to be honest with you, it's, you know, this is such an open type of situation, you know. I mean, I just want those guys to be great making music. I know they feel the same way about me. You know, Jesse put it perfectly. You know, this is our home. Blisskrieg is our home. We can go out, we can do what we need to do, we can explore the world, but, you know, we have a place to come home to. And so, yeah, there may be opportunities where they find other guys that they want to create with, and I'm perfectly fine with that. And, you know, hopefully moving forward, when we have a little more time, you know, we can actually bring some other singers in to kind of be a part of what we got going on. So I would honestly encourage them to make as much music with as many people as they can.
Wow. Look at you. No wonder they like you so much. That's awesome.
That is an honest answer. I'm not trying to sell anything here.
No, that's what I love about it. It came out as genuine. I really like that. Now, let's get back to this album. The album's called Remedy, right?
Yes, sir, Remedy.
Did you do the bulk of the writing? A little birdie told me you did the bulk of the lyrics.
You know, I was really going to facilitate whatever I needed to facilitate. So if the opportunity was there for me to have a blank canvas and, you know, be kind of run with it, then I did. Todd is an extraordinary writer. One of the things that I enjoyed about this process so much was that I didn't feel like I had to do everything. I didn't feel like I had to carry, you know, weight, so to say. It was something that was very much a group process. It was something where, you know, I needed to know what they were hearing and what they were feeling and all these things, because I really wanted to be able to translate for them, not just tell my own stories, but I really wanted to make sure that they felt like they were expressing themselves, not just musically, but lyrically, you know, regardless of who actually penned it. There was this involved process of sharing minds, but in the same sense, like I was saying, Todd is such a good writer that there were a couple of spots where he would have a line or he'd have maybe a lyric or he would have a melody, you know, something that was just coming through him. And I would run with that, or I'd roll with that. But I did have an opportunity, you know, for the bulk of it to really be able to dive in and challenge myself and try to carve out some of these subconscious conversations that I'm not just having with myself, but that I feel like Todd used channeling, and I think that's a great word. But there's definitely this connection to understanding that there's a higher purpose to this. And so for me as a vocalist or as a lyricist, I want to make sure that whatever that higher self is trying to say, or whatever that higher self believes the listener needs to hear, can come through me or to come through us. And so it was a wild process. There's really hasn't been anything that I've written that I've really stepped away. There's a couple of songs that have very, very, intimate meaning to me, but I wouldn't say I've always been unhappy with what I've created, but this is really one of the first records where I'm just deeply proud of every word, every nuance of what we were trying to say.
Absolutely. That said, is Remedy a concept album, or is there any sort of through line of the album?
We kind of loosely, talk about it being a conceptual record. There was just something that started happening within the stories of the songs, this storyline of this road to redemption, kind of like I was talking about how, these past bands or these past situations, when things don't quite work out and there's a lot of blaming, a lot of finger pointing, there's a lot of regret, there's a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas that go on, and it just eats you alive. And I think for me, with an opportunity like this, with the caliber of guys and kind of knowing where we all came from and kind of what we all had gone through, I think that sense of redemption, or that road to redemption, was very thick in the air. And then when I started trying to, like I say, channel those stories within the songs, there was definitely a dynamic journey that was happening from track to track that really kind of pulled that central character through this experience to where by the time you get to Remedy, which is the final track on the record, you really do feel like you've come to a point of completion, so, maybe not necessarily as like, black and white, this is a concept and we're going from one scene to the next, but the way that it flows and the way that it brings you through dynamically, I feel like you start picking up on this linear experience that it's cathartic and it's very rewarding. There's a sense of fulfillment that I feel just as me as a listener when I go back and listen to this record. There's a sense of fulfillment that I feel when we get to Remedy, and even not just in Remedy, but the last 20 seconds of Remedy, the way that it ends per se is just the most beautiful period at the end of a sentence. And I'm so proud of it.
I agree with what you said about the way that song ends. A lot of times you'll put on a record and, you'll go do whatever you're doing. I was listening to earbuds and doing whatever. And especially if it's not an album that you've heard before or that you know very well, that space in between songs, sometimes you're like, was that the last song? Oh, no, still no. Okay, was that the last song? Oh, still another one. But with Remedy, when that ends, that's the end of the album. I don't know what it is about it, but there's not another song. That's the end of the album. I don't know. It's just something about the tone and the way it, and I don't mean the tone like sonically, but I mean the tone like emotionally, the feeling, the tone of it as it's going out. You just know, oh, that's the end of the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like I said, I've listened to this album more than 10 times, and right now my favorite song on the album changes, but right now it's Waiting. What is your favorite song on the album if you could choose one of your babies?
Man, I tell you what, the most personal song to me would be like She Cries, but my favorite is Waiting. I mean, I loved it. You said that. I've always been a rocker. Once again, one of the common threads in our conversation here has been that regret and that road to redemption, and Waiting is really, there's no qualms about it. It's about letting go of that regret. It's about letting go and having an understanding that, all of these things serve a purpose in our life and they all belonged in their place, and so if that's submersed 20 years ago or submersed 10 years ago or whatever it is, that's where it belongs, and it's okay to feel or to work through your feelings and emotions about these things, but you have to leave it where it is, and so that song really is, about the realization of that and then the feeling that comes from really letting go and moving beyond.
I love it. So, Donald, I was wondering if it would be okay if I could play one of the tracks from this new album just to get everybody psyched about, going to buy the whole thing.
Absolutely. Fire away. What you going to rock?
That is the next question. What song do you think I should play? You know how when people make a trailer for a movie, the trailer is a teaser. It's supposed to make you want to go see the movie. What song on this album do you think would most make people want to go purchase the album?
Oh, my gosh.
That's a hard question, right?
It is a hard question. We talked about it earlier. It's hard to pick a favorite, and they kind of keep switching. And even with the feedback that we've initially gotten, it's all over the map, which just makes me so happy. It just fills my heart, because there's something for everybody in every song.
Agreed.
You know, one that I collectively as a band, as a group, one that really hit us as in like, okay, this is special and we're never going to forget this, was Destination Unknown. It has a lot of history to it as far as, I always call it a lap steel. I know it's a different type of steel guitar, but there's a cameo appearance on that by a gentleman named Van, who actually used to play with George Jones and a lot of the old schoolers back in the day.
No shit.
And most recently, he's been a bus driver. Or he has a relationship with Todd and a couple of guys that are kind of in our little posse there. And so, Todd asked him if he would be willing to put that mojo down on that track. I mean, the song is a great song, but the element that steel guitar adds to it is classic. It just sounds literally like a song that was written a long time ago that I've heard before that we were just playing again. You know, to go a little deeper on that, Jesse's performance on bass was actually on a very special bass guitar, which was given to him by his father before he had passed away, that he had never played before. So he came into the studio and basically played a one-take performance of his bass part, and then basically proceeded to nonchalantly say, well, I'm glad I got to use this bass guitar, which obviously piqued our interest as in, well, why are you so excited you got to play this guitar we'd never seen before? And then he nonchalantly proceeded to tell us this story that really kind of just touched our heart. And so, you know, at that point, we're like, well, that's the take. You know, the song to me, I think, especially in the end, you know, once the smoke clears and we kind of see what really comes from all this, I think that's going to be one of those songs that people always come back to.
That is a fantastic little behind-the-scenes snippet there. I appreciate that. Now, Donald, I know that you have toured the country a multitude of times, and you've been in and out of radio stations, and you've listened to radio people. So now I'm going to ask you to do me a favor, and you can say no if you want to, but it'll make you look foolish. Will you intro that song like you're a radio DJ?
Yeah, absolutely. Sure.
All right, do it. Go.
Hey, everybody, this is Donald Carpenter from Blisskrieg on the Fascination Street podcast, and I want to play a song from our new debut record, Remedy. This is Destination Unknown.
Nice. So, Donald, I know that you guys have never played any of these songs in front of an audience, except maybe, I don't know, some wives or some friends or something, but I know this is way out there. But in the event that there is a post-COVID world, is there a chance that you guys would tour this record?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for us to be able to experience this via all facets of the expression and the delivery process to get it to the masses. I mean, everything's just so uncertain, and obviously this isn't our primary gig nowadays. You know, we have a lot of other balance within our lives, so it would take a lot of planning and it would take a little, foresight, but, probably the easiest thing for us to do would be like some type of webcast performance, which, we have started to talk about a few of the different outlets that we could utilize to do that. I think our next step, especially being fully independent and all in-house, is to generate more content to be able to keep sharing and spreading the message of the record. So that, could be via lyric videos and actual formal videos and things of that nature. So I know that's what we're talking about. And, until we can really figure out when we could possibly get back out there and when the touring business gets back going, I think we want to get together and write some more music. We got together quickly. Like I said, we wrote 10s on the record. We want to see what we're coming up with 30 or 40 deep, So I think the next little stop would be, getting in the studio and possibly starting to work on maybe an acoustic EP, kind of like, Alice in Chains, Jar of Flies thing. There's a sound that those guys are known for. And we explored it a little bit on some of the dynamics on this record, but I think to go full on acoustic would be really cool.
Yeah, sort of an unplugged version.
Once again, I don't think we would go into too many expectations, other than just
Sure.
Kind of using that as our route. And that's what we kind of used as the measuring tool would be like a Jar of Flies type of record, something that, there's a really cool story that goes into the making of that record. And so we want to kind of stay in that vein of just not really overthinking it, just coming in and seeing what comes out.
Nice. I love it. Donald, can you tell everybody where they can find you and where they can find Blisskrieg on social media?
I'm really bad at social media. I'm just not in that mindset, but I do have a Facebook page, just my name, Donald Carpenter, and Blisskrieg. We have, Facebook page, Instagram page. You can find the record on all, major digital outlets, Spotify's and things of that nature. We do have a YouTube channel, which we're trying to grow right now. We do have some fresh content that's up on there, including a behind the scenes video that our good friend Sean Carswell, who is also on the Dirks crew, but has actually been pivoting into video and photography here, during this break and just did a phenomenal job, putting some of the clips together. And so that's been really kind of fun to share that with the fans. But yeah, if you go to those main hubs, you'll be able to interact directly with us.
Fantastic. And before I let you go, is there anything we didn't talk about or I didn't ask you about that you wanted to talk about today?
No, it's been a lot of fun. I think we covered a lot of stuff. I'm a bit long-winded. I think I gave you a lot of meat on those, but no, I think we covered everything. I think it was really good.
Well, that is fantastic. Donald Carpenter, lead vocalist for Blisskrieg and their new album, Remedy, which is available right now everywhere. I got mine from Amazon. I suggest everybody go there too because I hate Apple. I just want to thank you so much, Donald, for taking the time out of your busy day and your hectic schedule to hang out and let us get to know you a little bit better on Fascination Street, man. I really appreciate it. I had a good time talking to you.
Dude, same thing to you. I mean, we're all one, and it takes the team to make it work. And without the ability to be able to sit down and talk about this, it just isn't the same. And it really helps us to be able to understand the purpose behind all this.
Fantastic. And thanks to this album, I might have found a new way to end my show.
All right.
Are you ready?
Yeah, let's do it.
Donald Carpenter, thank you so much, man. Have better days, my blessed friend.
You too. You have better days, too. I love it.
I love it, too. Like, once I heard that line, I was like, holy shit, that's amazing. I love it. And it's sung with such feeling and such emotion. I love that lyric. Thanks again, man.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we appreciate it.
I'm down here in San Antonio, so hopefully you guys will play Austin or something, and I'll go over there, man. Check it out.
Well, yeah, being out of Texas here, if there's an opportunity for us to play, I'm sure we're going to start playing in everybody's kind of home areas, and we have some great places around here as well. So it's probably a little more plausible that we'll get there before anywhere. So
awesome. Well, thanks again, Donald. I appreciate it, and you have a great weekend, man.
Yes, sir. You have a great day.
All right. Bye-bye.
All right.
As always, thanks for listening, Streetwalkers. And don't forget, follow the show on Twitter at FascinationSTPD, on Instagram at Fascination Street Pod. Follow the podcast page on Facebook at Fascination Street Podcast. And of course, you can always email me at fascinationstreetpod@gmail.com. And if you haven't already, don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button and rate us on iTunes. Opening music is the song Magnolia from the 2014 album Intransigence, used with permission from Douglas Miles Clark. Closing music is Apollo from the 2001 album Into the Known by the band Sapphire. Thanks for hanging out with us and getting to know a little bit about our guest. We'll see you next time on Fascination Street.